Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we need to talk about Nightmare Throne. I already did a video a couple days ago talking about this card when it got officially announced and just giving a quick overview on it. It's a good card, specifically for the Ubel archetype, but actually for some other applications as well that we're talking about, because lo and behold, another generic ROTA. Now it's not as generic, it does get a little bit more specific, but a ROTA nonetheless, and there are some pretty cool applications for this card outside of specifically Ubel. So we're going to talk about that. We'll even throw in a little Ubel stuff at the end. We'll start with a little bit of just funny targets, cool targets, and then by the end we'll get to like the more potential legit applications that could come up for this card down the line. But just going over this card real quick before we jump into it. This is Nightmare Throne. It's a field spell for the Ubel archetype. It reads, when this card is activated, you can take a Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense from your deck and either add it to your hand or destroy it. That's the generic ROTA. It's not out of this world generic, but every single type in the game have monsters that are 0/0. It's just like a pretty standard stat line when Konami wants to make a card that's has better effects than actual stats, and you'll see that pretty often. Also, the fact that it essentially either Foolish Burials or adds to hand, but even more specifically destroys, does give this a little more application as well. As well. But yeah, any Fiend 0/0, keep an eye on that. We'll get there later. And then has some more Ubel stuff. Once per turn, if a Ubel monster you control leaves the field by card effect, you can add to your hand one of your Ubel monsters that is banished or in your deck or graveyard, whose original level is 1 higher or lower than one of those monsters that left the field. Then you can special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. Basically, another float tells your opponent if you're going to out Ubel. All the Ubels, I think, can't be destroyed by battle, and so if your opponent outs them by a card effect, this card's going to get you one of the incarnate monsters anyway. Still pretty cool. But yeah, that's only going to come up in Ubel stuff, obviously. But let's get into the targets. Let's start with the most obvious one. This is the one that, yes, applies to Ubel for sure, but also is a really generic, good Fiend tool. And this card also got revealed alongside Nightmare Throne a couple days ago. So Infernal Graveswarmer, really, really good card. It has a quick effect from hand to special summon itself if you control a Fiend. That's really nice because we've seen types in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Cyburst that can really struggle with that. Stuff like Salamangrate sometimes, if their normal summon got popped or banished or shuffled, whatever, or even bounced back to hand before you got a chance to use your next effect, a lot of times they did not have ways to extend through that. And so this being a quick effect means if your opponent tries to remove something, you can chain this and still get a Fiend out onto the field, which is really nice. When it summons, you then get the option to destroy a Ubel monster you control or mentions it if you want. You do not have to do this, so this part is not really a big deal, but in Ubel it could come up. And the other effect is that you can banish it from grave to special summon a Fiend monster with 0/0 from hand or grave. So you summon a 0/0 Fiend, you special summon this, you link them off, and then this guy gets you another one back, or gets the same one back, and just gets you another chance at a body to keep extending with. It's really cool. So just good card in general, good extender that then gets you another body later as well. That's just generically a good card. All right, now let's get into the other targets, the less expected targets. The first one here is Cap Shell. I don't expect this one to be that worth it. This card just doesn't feel like the payoff is quite worth it to really be splashing in Nightmare Throne into a deck that otherwise wouldn't play it. But he's here. I don't think he's a bad card at the end of the day, but just to draw one is not enough, probably. But still cool to see. Still becomes extra searchable, so keep it in mind. Next up is DDs. There's not a ton of DD search targets with this here, but again, you have to consider one thing. But listen, the two good search targets are Kepler, which is the best normal summon in the deck. It's one card combo, I believe, for them. And then DD Savant Copernicus. This is another one, decent search target. It comes up in a lot of combos. But you have to just keep in mind the main thing is Infernal Grave Squirmer. So if you were to play this card as a consistency card for DDs in general, and even if you open it with Kepler and you're okay, so I'm not searching another Kepler, obviously, why would I do that? Well, if your Kepler gets hand trapped, then you're able to just go Nightmare Throne, search Squirmer, and then Special Squirmer, and then you're able to just like start doing potentially just Fiend stuff to set up the Unchained Link 2 and the Trap if you want to play a little package for that. Or just help you link climb into something else. Now, the one awkward part about this card in DD specifically is that if you link off Kepler, he's going to the extra deck, not the grave. So you would like to see a way to get Kepler actually into grave, but still, it's an extender nonetheless to help you get into a link 2 potentially. Maybe even just make the link 2 that just adds any pendulum from deck to hand, and then go from there. But yeah. DDs are definitely on the eyeball here. I know sometimes they've had consistency problems. This could be a potential card to help cover up some of those. Just some food for thought. Next up, we move to the Sacred Beast engine. This is a really cool one. There's actually a couple different targets you can search here, but obviously Dark Beckoning Beast is the main one. The other ones aren't very good. They're just kind of, they have like okay effects. Like if they're engraved, they can banish themselves to like search one of the engine cards. So you could search one of those if you want, but I don't imagine you doing that all too often. But still, a cool engine. We saw this engine actually see competitive play a couple years ago with Curious, the Lightsworn guy, and on your way to being able to make him and send any tier limit monster, and then start doing tier limit fusions on one of their early iterations before their second wave of support came out. But either way, cool engine. It's not a bad engine. You'd have to figure out what your payoff's going to be, but you know, you get a decent amount of advantage just off of one Dark Beckoning Beast. And again, if you already open Dark Beckoning Beast, you just play one copy of Infernal Gravescormer, or more if you want more. But if you play one, then it just means Nightmare Throne can just search it, so you'd be playing like 4 or 5 just by default. So if this gets hand trapped, boom, drop the Graveswarmer, and boom, just do Unchained stuff. Which is really easy, right? Because if you just do the math on it, it's like you normal Dark Beckoning Beast, it gets impermed, right? Then you special Gravesquirmer, or you use Nightmare Throne, search Gravesquirmer, special Gravesquirmer next to Dark Beckoning Beast. You make the Unchained Link 2 that search Shavara. Then you banish Gravesquirmer to revive the Dark Beckoning Beast, and then you're able to use Shavara's effect popping either, it doesn't matter. And then you make the Unchained Soul of Rage, and when Shavara hits grave, it's going to get you the trap. So you'd have Rage and Trap just off of those 2 cards, and that's playing through a hand trap. So pretty good value there, and I think that's really the key here that's going to come up in a lot of these Fiend decks. Next up, we move to what I'm going to call Labyrinth, Absolute King Backjack, and Labyrinth Coup Clock. Both Fiends 0/0. That's actually huge. Now, it would be significantly more crazy for Labyrinth, and I even would bet that Labyrinth would like the best version of Labyrinth maybe to play this card if either Stovey or Chandelier were 0/0. If either of those were 0/0 and you could like it straight up is getting you to engine, we might have actually seen this like be the best version of Labyrinth. Now that being said, I still think there's a world where this is actually quite playable in Labyrinth, right? If you're looking at the utility of Nightmare Throne, right? It can either now search Backjack, which is maybe the best discard target in your entire deck off of Stovey or Chandra, and by playing it, you also like sort of up your hand trap capability going second, right? Because if you open this with either Stovey or Chandra, then this is essentially a hand trap. It's the same thing as like using the other one that sets a trap from hand and it can be activated, because you'll pitch this on your opponent's turn. If this will let you look at the top 3, as long as you're playing a good enough number of traps, you're going to find something, set it, and it can be activated immediately into your opponent's board on their turn 1. So you up your chance of opening like a hand trap-ish hand while also setting up your engine. And he's like a pseudo-normal summon. If you don't open Ariana, you know what, let me just get Backjack. I'll just normal summon him and link him off. Boom. Play an Almirage and you're good to go. Or play Karibo, Link Karibo, and you're good to go. Or you can just get Coup Clock. I know a lot of hands, it feels like you're one search away from ending up with Coup Clock and being able to like basically resolve even further. I know the deck's gotten better and better at that as they've gotten more support overall, and like transaction rollback helps with stuff like that. But still, there's still utility in searching Ku Klux whenever. And then, of course, Infernal Grave Squirmer. I think maybe this engine could be specifically significant for the Unchained variant of Labyrinth, because now you can search Grave Squirmer. If you just had any Fiend, that's 0/0 particularly, but Ku Klux pretty easy to get access to in the deck now. So you could easily do a line where you go like Ariana search Ku Klux, then you pitch Ku Klux, that way you can fire a trap early this turn, and then fire a trap, maybe it's one of the engine traps, and then you Squirmer, make the Unchained link to, revive the Ku Klux, and then just basically get the Unchained setup on top of that. This engine could significantly add speed to Labyrinth, like legitimately. So I don't know if it's all the way there. I know there's multiple variants of Labyrinth. It would take like legit testing, but I do think there's something there. And if you're a Labyrinth player, I think it's at least worth taking a look into to see if that variant could be something. But I also acknowledge that like the more non-trap cards you play into something like Labyrinth, it can hurt the synergy of the deck, because you do still need to see enough of the traps. So we'll keep that in mind. And then lastly, it's just the Ubel stuff, right? This searches Samsara Regenerating Lotus, which is actually now a pretty decent one-card combo for the deck. Like that. Spirit of Ubel and regular Ubel. You normally wouldn't want to search these, but you can just destroy them right out of the deck, right? If you destroy Spirit of Ubel, it just summons Ubel. If you destroy Ubel, you just summon Terra Incarnate. And then I think you can even destroy Terra Incarnate from the deck and just summon the last one if you want. I don't know if you really want to do that, but because those cards aren't even that good, but you just need them as something to float off of Ubel into. But yeah, this deck actually does stuff now. It could legitimately be like a rogue deck going forward. I don't think post Phantom Nightmare it's that good of a rogue deck, but I do now think post Legacy of Destruction it could actually be like an interesting rogue deck for sure. And then also add Grave Squirmer, which literally all of the monsters in the entire Ubel deck are all 0/0 Fiends. So this guy is a very good extender for them, and that's really good. So those are my thoughts here. Just want to get this out to you because when I went over it, I just kind of went over like, oh yeah, that's cool, like searches the Ubel stuff. It has multiple other applications. There's multiple other decks that are going to look at this and potentially think about trying to take advantage of it. I think that's really cool. So I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Are there any other weird applications that I didn't mention here, or digging even deeper to any of the things we talked about, DDs, the Sacred Beast, the Labyrinths, or Ubel specifically that you think are worth noting? I'd love to hear that stuff down below if you've already been labbing. But I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching. A really good amount of cards coming in the next week. I'm keeping you posted on that. But I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace.